Okay, so you know how sometimes there are these legal stories that just kind of grab you?
Yeah.
And you get drawn into all the twists and turns and all the different layers of what happened?
Yeah.
Well, this case we're looking at today with the Menendez brothers, oh, this is definitely one of those. I mean, it's back in the news big time. We're talking about Lyle and Erik Menendez.
Right.
Convicted for killing their parents.
Yeah.
Way back in 1996 for murders that happened even earlier in 1989. And now, all these years later, everyone's talking about the possibility that they might actually be released.
It's wild how it's all coming back around.
It is. It's like this whole mix of people trying to get them resentenced,
Yeah.
plus all the stories from back then that still haven't gone away. And then you throw in how much the legal system and the politics around this have changed.
Yeah, you've got the whole landscape to consider, too.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And it's not just rehashing an old case. It's like it's happening right now with all these new legal actions. So today we're going to do a deep dive into all the different ways Lyle and Erik Menendez might actually end up getting out of prison.
Right. And we'll be focusing especially on all these efforts to get them resentenced. We've got a bunch of different sources we'll be looking at for this. Some news articles that give us all the facts and updates. And get this, we even found this awesome discussion thread on Reddit.
Oh, wow.
That goes deep into some really complex questions about accountability and how people see this whole case.
Reddit. I love it. So basically, for everyone listening today, our mission for this deep dive is to break it all down for you.
Yeah.
Make sure you understand all the legal stuff, all the ethics of it all.
It is complicated.
And like who are the major players now that it's back in the news, and then like all the different paths that Lyle and Erik are trying to use to maybe get out of prison.
Right. We want to make sure this makes sense.
We're going to cut through all the noise.
And like pull out what's really important.
So you get a complete picture, but without getting totally bogged down.
Right.
Okay, so this case, it's super complex.
Oh, for sure. It's been going on forever. Let's jump right in. What about this resentencing thing everyone's talking about? What is going on with that?
Okay, so back in October 2024, George Gascón, he was the DA at the time.
Right.
He made this huge move. He filed a motion to get the brothers resentenced. So right now they're serving life without parole.
Right.
Gascón wanted to change that to 50 years to life. And here's the big thing.
Okay.
Because of how old they were when all this happened and how long they've already been locked up, this change, it would mean Lyle and Erik could go right in front of a parole board.
And asked to get out.
Immediately, like right away.
Which obviously got people talking.
Oh, yeah. Huge debate.
But then the new DA, Nathan Hochman.
Right. The guy who beat Gascón in the next election.
Yeah. He's got a totally different take on this.
Well, he's basically saying, no way. He is really against resentencing. He actually filed his own motion asking the court to just get rid of Gascón's petition.
Just throw it out.
Yeah.
And his arguments are pretty straightforward. He says the brothers haven't shown that they really understand how bad what they did was. They haven't taken full responsibility for it. And they keep bringing up this self-defense thing, which Hochman's calling lies.
Oh, wow.
So it sounds like Hochman's not just worried about the self-defense claims. He's saying they've been dishonest about other stuff, too.
That's right. His office is saying they've got a list, they call it a catalog,
Oh, wow.
of 20 lies
20.
that they believe the brothers have told over the years, including some big allegations that came up way back during the trials,
Yeah.
but that were never actually proven, like the one that their dad had raped Lyle's girlfriend,
Oh, right.
that their mom was trying to poison them,
Yeah, I remember hearing about that one.
and that they'd even tried to get a gun
Oh, God.
before the murders.
Wow. So Hochman's saying, basically, until they admit to all these things he says are lies,
Yeah.
he won't even think about resentencing.
And he also still believes that they're dangerous, that they could hurt someone again.
He does, yeah. So he's pretty firm about this.
Strong stance. But what are Lyle and Erik's lawyers saying about all this?
Their attorneys, Geragos and Gardner,
Right.
they're just as strong in their arguments on the other side. They're saying the brothers have admitted to the murders. They've said they're sorry over and over.
Oh, yeah.
And that they've made huge progress while in prison.
Like they're rehabilitated.
Yeah, they say that's exactly what's happened. They've even said that the reasons Hochman's giving to block resentencing are completely bogus.
Wow.
Or that Gascón already thought about all that stuff when he filed the motion in the first place.
Okay, so it sounds like it's really heating up.
It is, and it's all coming down to this hearing that's happening really soon, like as we're talking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this Friday, April 11th, 2025, a judge is going to hear arguments about whether or not to get rid of Gascón's motion.
The one Hochman wants to throw out.
Exactly.
So what can happen at this hearing?
So the judge could say, yeah, Hochman, you're right, let's get rid of this. That would basically stop the whole resentencing thing that Gascón started. Or the judge could say, no, I'm not throwing it out.
Right.
And then they could move forward with resentencing.
Okay.
But there's a third option. The judge could say, I'm going to do this my way. I don't care what the DA wants. I'm going to go ahead with a resentencing hearing.
Wow.
Yeah. So you see how much power the judge has in all this.
So even though the DA is saying no, it doesn't mean it's over.
Exactly. Brian Claypool, he's a California defense attorney who's been following all this really closely. He said that in the end, the judge is the one who decides about resentencing.
So the DA can say whatever he wants, but the judge is the one who makes the call.
Right. And all of this really brings us to this core conflict in this whole Menendez case. And it comes down to admitting you did something wrong.
Okay.
Versus these claims they keep making about self-defense.
Right, because Hochman really seems to be stuck on this.
Yeah.
That Lyle and Erik need to just come right out and say what they did was wrong.
Right. And that all the self-defense stuff was a lie.
Yeah, like completely made up. But remember, they've always said they acted in self-defense.
Right. They claim all that alleged abuse gave them no choice.
Yeah, that's what they've always said. And Gascón, when he filed his motion, he actually mentioned all that. He talked about how people understand a lot more about sexual violence now than they used to. Mm-hmm. And he said that was part of why he thought resentencing made sense.
So maybe he was saying he believed their story?
Maybe. But Hochman's not buying it. He's basically saying you can't say you acted in self-defense, which means you thought it was justified.
Right.
Even if you were wrong, and then turn around and say you're truly sorry, and you take full responsibility for killing your parents the way they did.
And this is where that Reddit thread gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about a court case, People v. Blocker.
Right.
Where the judge said the defendant had to admit guilt in order to be eligible for a reduced sentence. So the question becomes, how does that apply here? Like, does it apply to the Menendez brothers? And some people on Reddit were saying, well, they have admitted to doing something wrong. They've said they're sorry.
They've expressed remorse.
Yeah. Over all these years in prison, even while they're still sticking to the self-defense story because of the alleged abuse.
Right. They say what they did was wrong, but they had a reason.
Yeah.
But then other people are saying, well, if they keep saying self-defense, it looks like they aren't really taking responsibility. Like, it doesn't seem genuine.
The court might see it that way.
Or the parole board.
Yeah, exactly. And this one commenter on Reddit, they even pointed out how Erik says he feels remorse.
Right.
But Lyle says he feels regret.
Interesting.
And this commenter was saying those are two different things. They were saying Lyle's just sorry it happened, but Erik is like truly sorry for what he did.
And maybe that matters.
It might. Some people think that for the legal system to say, okay, we believe you when you say you're responsible for first-degree murder, which means you planned it out.
Right.
You have to agree with the verdict.
Accept it.
Even if you personally think what you did was justified because of the abuse.
So it's like a legal thing. You have to say you're guilty even if you feel like what you did was right.
It's complicated. And then you've got Hochman, who's completely focused on this idea that their self-defense claim, it's totally made up.
He thinks they just made it up to get away with murder.
Pretty much, yeah. He's specifically talking about their claim that they were scared because their parents had guns in the den and were going to attack them.
Right.
He's saying that's totally made up.
A complete fabrication.
And he's pointing to how brutal the murders were.
Yeah.
Shotguns over and over.
To the back of the head, to the face.
To their kneecaps, even.
And they supposedly staged the scene.
They did. Which makes it hard to believe they were just terrified for their lives.
Yeah.
He's saying this all shows they were not acting in self-defense.
So basically he's saying that because it was so brutal, they couldn't have been scared for their lives.
Right. And that they keep telling this story that's not true.
That they're not being honest about what really happened and why.
Exactly. So we've got this big question about whether they're really admitting they did wrong and taking responsibility. But then there's also the whole cone of what they've been like since they were convicted.
Yeah.
That's got to be a big factor in all this resentencing stuff, right?
It seems like it.
Right. And there's actually a part of the California Penal Code.
Okay.
Section 1172.1A5.
Catchy.
It specifically says that when a court's deciding on resentencing, they have to look at what's called post-conviction factors.
What does that mean?
It means they have to look at how the person's behaved in prison.
Oh, okay.
Their disciplinary record.
Right.
And they have to look at any rehabilitation efforts they've made.
So basically, if they've been good and they've tried to better themselves?
Exactly. And Gascón, when he first suggested resentencing, he put a lot of weight on all that.
He thought that was really important.
He did. He said that they had been model prisoners, basically. Their behavior was exemplary.
Wow.
And that their rehabilitation efforts were really impressive.
Really?
He said that Erik had become like a really positive force in the prison community.
Oh, wow.
And that Lyle had this incredible record of rehabilitation.
Like really turned his life around.
Yeah. There have been reports saying that Lyle's been involved with programs to make the prison a better place.
Okay.
And that he wants to help other people who've been through abuse.
That's amazing.
And their cousin, Tamar Goodell.
Yeah.
She's been a big supporter, too. She's saying that they've always been sorry for what they did and that they keep trying to grow and be better people. And she says that's what rehabilitation is all about.
That's powerful.
Even Lyle's talked about how being in prison has helped him find peace and patience.
Wow.
So basically they're saying they've changed, that they're not the same people they were back then.
Right.
But even if they don't get resentenced, there are other ways they could get out right.
Yeah. There's more than one way to skin a cat. What else is going on?
So one of the big ones is clemency. They're asking Governor Gavin Newsom to pardon them, basically.
Oh, wow.
And we know he's thinking about it. He's actually ordered the parole board to do a whole risk assessment.
To see if they're dangerous.
Yeah, basically. And they've scheduled hearings for June 13th.
Okay.
Oh, and Newsom's office is going to do their own investigation, too.
Separate from the parole board.
Yeah, so he's really taking this seriously.
Okay.
And then there's the whole habeas corpus thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what that is, right?
I think so, but maybe some of our listeners don't. Can you explain it?
Okay, so habeas corpus is when you go to court and say, I'm being held illegally, like I shouldn't be in prison.
Okay.
And the Menendez brothers' lawyers filed one of these in 2023. They're saying there's new evidence that means they should get a new trial.
What new evidence?
So they have a letter Erik wrote to his cousin Andy before the murders. And they say this letter proves that they were being abused. And then there's this guy, Roy Rosello.
I've heard that name.
He was part of Menudo.
The band.
Yeah, and he's claiming that Jose Menendez abused him.
Wow.
But Hochman, the DA, he's fighting this too. He's saying this evidence is not believable and they can't even use it in court.
So we've got all these different parts of the legal system working at the same time. It's like a legal three-ring circus.
It is. And when you look at the whole picture, it's super complicated, both legally and ethically.
Right.
So legally, the big question right now is, will Gascón's motion for resentencing even happen?
Right, because Hochman wants to get rid of it.
Exactly. And then there's this debate about what does it mean to take responsibility?
Right. Especially when they're saying it was self-defense.
Yeah. And then there's the judge. How much power does he have to do what he thinks is right, even if the DA disagrees?
Right.
And how do all these different legal processes work together? The resentencing, the parole board for clemency, and the habeas corpus case.
Right. And then there's all the stuff from the trials way back when.
Oh, yeah. The defense said it was self-defense. The prosecution said it was about money.
Right.
And now there's this question about, is this new evidence good enough to have a whole new trial? It's a lot.
It's a legal maze.
Yeah.
And then ethically, it gets even trickier.
Oh, yeah. You've got to think about what the DA's job is.
Right.
Is it to punish people or to rehabilitate them?
Right. And what about after they've been in prison for so long?
Right. Is it ethical to keep them locked up forever?
I don't know.
Then you have to think about Gascón. Did he file that motion just to look good before he left office?
Interesting.
And what about Hochman?
Yeah.
Is he just trying to be tough on crime?
To make himself look good.
Maybe.
And then there's the victims' families.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Some of them are saying let him out now.
They are. But you have to remember that not everyone in the family feels that way.
Right, and that they were all against it before.
They have to be sensitive to that. And then on top of all that, there's this whole question of abuse.
Right.
Did it really happen?
And if it did, how much does that change how we see their actions and whether they're truly sorry now?
Yeah.
So many things to think about. And it sounds like things are going to be happening pretty fast.
They are. Like we said, that hearing about whether or not to get rid of the resentencing motion.
The one Hochman filed?
Yeah, that's happening this Friday, April 11th.
Okay.
And then depending on what the judge says, the actual resentencing hearings could happen the next week, April 17th and 18th.
So soon.
And don't forget the parole board hearings about clemency.
Right.
Those are set for June 13th.
Okay. So a lot's happening in the next few months.
But we still don't know what Newsom's going to do about clemency. Or what the court's going to say about that habeas corpus case.
It's all up in the air.
Yeah. And this whole case, people are still really interested in it, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Like that Netflix series.
It's been huge.
So people are paying attention to what's happening.
Definitely. The Menendez brothers, their story has fascinated people for decades.
And it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
Nope.
And I think these new documentaries and shows, they're reminding everyone of how this case makes us think about crime and justice and all the complicated things that make people do what they do.
Right. So we're almost out of time for today's deep dive. What are the main things our listeners should remember as this story keeps going?
Okay, so the most important things. The DA right now.
Hochman.
Yeah, he's trying to stop the Menendez brothers from getting resentenced.
Right.
And the big thing he's stuck on is he says they need to admit their self-defense story was a lie.
A complete fabrication.
That they need to say flat out they murdered their parents and they were wrong.
Okay.
But we can't forget that there are other ways they could get out of prison.
Through the governor or the courts?
Right, Newsom could give them clemency. And they've still got that habeas corpus case going. And don't forget the judge. In the end, it's up to the judge whether or not they get resentenced.
No matter what the DA says.
So basically, this case is a huge mess of legal procedures, ethical questions, and these stories that just won't go away. And people still can't agree on what really happened.
It's fascinating.
It is. And it makes you think.
So as you all keep following this story, here's something to consider. After someone's been locked up for decades, does real rehabilitation mean they have to say they're sorry in a specific way, even if they still believe they were right to do what they did because they were so traumatized?
Yes, a good question.
And how do our courts balance holding people accountable for violent crimes with the possibility that they might have really changed after being locked up for so long?
It's tough. There's no easy answer.
No. So pay attention to what happens next, especially at that hearing on Friday and with the parole board review.
Right.
This case is far from over. Think about everything we've talked about today, all the different sides of this, and how hard it is to decide what's fair and what's right.
It really makes you think.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have for today, but we will be back soon with another deep dive into some more fascinating and important stories.
See you then.